My name is Kelly Scott Reed, and welcome to A Word, Rafa Nya's interview show where I get to talk to creatives, writers, poets, filmmakers, podcasters, and those who make the magic that make this life worth living. Jennifer A. Sutherland is a poet, essayist, and attorney in Baltimore. She is the author of House of Myth and Necessity and the lyric hybrid book length poem Bullet Points, also from River Books. Her work has appeared in or is coming out soon to Plume, Chicago Review of Books, Birmingham Poetry Review, Hopkins Review, Best New Poets, Denver Quarterly, Kajib, Epic, and elsewhere. She's appeared online at 100 Pictures of Honey, My Bad Poetry, Of Poetry, and Garden of Thought, and live at the New York Poetry Festival. That had to be terrifying.
It was so much fun. It was so
Sure
much fun.
was.
Yeah.
I just, oh, Dasrat Yassini Poetry Festival, Virginia Festival of the Book, Lit Youngstown, and other places. Welcome, Jennifer, to A Word. Thank you so much for showing up today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
So it's interesting. How did you hear about this particular interview uh, opportunity?
From the poet Donna Voyer, who is a friend and someone I admire and read all of her books. And I saw her episode. I checked out a couple of other episodes. I checked out some of the poems and other things that you've published, and I thought this is the spot to be.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you, Jennifer. And we were talking about your poetry, and one thing that always sticks out to me, and you're one of a few, the attorney writer.
Mhm.
So a lot of the attorneys I know, especially members of my family and me at the time, were English majors first. What was your, before you became a attorney, what was your major in college?
I was pre-law, um, and my path to law was sort of a weird and crooked one. I think most people who knew me as a kid would have figured me for the English teaching path. My parents are both teachers. My dad is an English teacher. I grew up. There were other kids in my neighborhood who were reading comic books, and I love comic books. But my dad, I was had all of his books around, so I was reading Sherwood Anderson. And I, I think I was just sort of very early on. I was headed in that direction, and then I had a difficult adolescence. I had a difficult home life as a kid, and I think for me, going to law school felt like a way to take back control of my life after feeling like it had been out of my control for a little bit. And it's a business where language counts for a lot. So I sort of I slotted myself in and kept going, I guess.
That's a really great way to balance things. I always think about Wallace Stevens and
Hmm.
how he worked for the Hartford
Hmm.
Insurance while being this
Yeah.
absolutely incredible. It's like it's the perfect balance. Like you get to make a living, but also
Hmm.
be a brilliant writer. I think that's kind of the perfect balance.
And he
Uh,
was he was practicing law. I think people tend to think of him as being like a desk jockey guy, and he was the head of the department there, but he was out traveling around the East Coast. He did construction and surety bond work. So he was going out and looking at things that projects that weren't getting done the way they were supposed to, and evaluating whether or not the insurance company should pay for it or not. I mean, he was actively practicing law.
that's so cool. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that's very cool. Well, we'll get into your writing. Some of the interview questions I asked, they're pretty, they kind of lead into other things. So I'll ask a question and then we'll probably talk and we'll meander, and that's cool with me.
Hmm.
What was the most surprising thing you learned about yourself while writing House of Myth and Necessity?
How shy I am, Eh, which is which is very strange because I think my poetry definitely leans in the confessional direction. I grew, my gateway poet was Sylvia Plath. Like a lot of our gateways were. So I lean in that direction, but I also am very hesitant, I think, sometimes to reveal as much about my life as I do in my writing. And so I have come up with all sorts of creative ways to do that in a slanted way, as Emily would say, I think. And some of that is persona, and some of it is voice, and that I think allows me to kind of hide a little bit while I'm nevertheless writing these very revealing and vulnerable pieces, I think.
Would you be willing to read a little something for us just to give us a little taste of what it doesn't necessarily have to be from that book because I want people to make sure they run out and grab it, but something that you feel reflects that?
Of course. And it is from a book. And I want to show you
Okay.
the cover because it's the coolest cover ever.
Oh,
Isn't it
yeah,
beautiful?
it is. Oh my gosh. Well,
And
I'm going to need a
this is
copy of that
Alcestis on the
picture.
front. This is
Oh,
Alcestis on the front.
beautiful.
So this book is mostly a collection of persona poems where the speaker is some variation of me and the mythological character of Alcestis. And I talk a little bit about who Alcestis was and what happened to her in the book, but you don't have to know all of that to appreciate this poem, I think. Um, and this is called Alcestis as a Hun, as I am from Baltimore, but not the kitschy cute kind. There were like 3 clubs worth going to, and we went to none of them. Our accents were mostly different and a little the same. Your York Road, you, and my Blair Road. You have to be from here to understand. It's Bel Air. I have to explain what people can't figure out for themselves, but they hate it when I do. I rode the number 15 down to Erdman Avenue. My little brother got sepsis playing out back behind the house in the alley. He dunked his foot into a hole filled up with rain and rat shit. Meanwhile, husband, you were living just down the street from a pool club and Jim Palmer. He used to crash his poppy red Corvette right through the middle of the ball game like a line drive, like he didn't give a crap about the batter or the baseman, because he didn't. No one liked him either, not even the Artie Donovan era farts who sat around the Valley Inn popping natty bows, which were shit beers then too. This is not me being wistful for the neighborhood, just me putting 2 and 2 together while I write this down. How you always knew when I'd been to your apartment, while you weren't there from tiny clues I guess I left behind. Maybe the carpet looked less impeccably new because I shed some skin cells on it, or I moved a coaster on the coffee table 1/4 millimeter to the right. You were such a stickler for things being exactly how you wanted them. When you were 12, you soaked a car on mischief night and took off on your scooter, mortified, and with your next door neighbor in pursuit. At that age, I got myself arrested in a high school parking lot with a 4-pack of coolers in my lap. They cost me one quick flash of my fledgling boobs. And then this officer showed up and shined his department issue flashlight on them, just a little longer than was necessary while he took the bottles off me. I sat handcuffed to a desk chair while he filled out his paperwork. None of this was badass, by the way, or extraordinary, only desperate. A bid to let me play 2 minutes in heaven in the closet with a script that wouldn't have me working at a Taco Bell, which is why I never figured out how to hit you back. Also, you never once came home from school to a ringing phone, a bill collector asking where your mother's mortgage payment was, late like it was every month, and you were also never late. You never frantically counted out the minutes ticking while a little plastic bar sucked up your pee. And Wells Fargo, you can go and fuck yourself because you called all the time. And once when I was in the bathroom peeing on the plastic stick. If I'm being honest, I'll admit, I thought when I climbed in your 1992 maroon Accord that I was some hot shit. I thought finally I was going to blow this place like a fucking princess, like F you Catholic schoolgirls, and F your Benetton and your Depeche Mode and F your asymmetrical wedge haircuts. And I guess I did get somewhere, but I did not ask for this death descending between us like a fat, feathered disappointment in the middle of Bel Air Road between St. Michael's Church and a Taco Bell. So fuck this too.
Wow, I really love it. I'm tearing up a little bit. You're saying things that really resonate to me. I think we grew up in about the same era. I'm
Mhm.
assuming I'm older than you. I'm pretty positive, but I don't know. I just think that was beautiful and
Thank
sad,
you.
very sad. You're hitting me in the right spot. I honestly, I don't have a ton of emotion. I know it sounds weird. I don't. I cry at lyrics
Hmm.
and poetry. That's it. You can
Hmm.
show me something on the screen, nothing. I could be at a funeral, nothing. But when I hear words by someone else, and always by someone else, and it's coming from the outside that resonate with me, um, that's when I get emotional. And the fact that you were saying, this is stuff that comes from you, that this is talking about you
Hmm.
on some level. It just it builds a connection, I think, with the audience, which happens to be me and whoever's watching this right now. It was really great. And what would you say when I'm like listening to it? It's a very unique voice. I mean, I've heard it before, so I know you were like
Hmm.
Sylvia Plath was your first like
Hmm.
foray. What would you say is the most identifiable qualities of your work?
Um,
Are the most
Irony is probably a big factor. Sentence style, lineation, prosy language. Sylvia Plath is my gateway poet, but Anne Carson is my love. My great romance. So a lot of her sort of essayistic approaches to things, I think I like. I think some of that is the lawyer in me. Some of that is thinking that if I keep those words going to the right margin, something will start to make sense.
yeah, yeah. Have you always written, or did you discover, like, were you just someone who just naturally took, like, some people journal and some people have
Mhm,
always written? For me, I'm more like, oh, I feel like it right now. It was never something I
mhm,
did consistently. I would like go through these fits and starts where I would do a ton and then I would stop.
mhm.
How are you approaching it? When did you begin?
I remember writing terrible poems in fifth grade and sixth grade. Um, and I was a notebook girl. I was the girl who had the notebooks around with her all of the time. And I didn't necessarily know what I thought about anything until I had written about it a little bit. Um, and I grew up, like I said, in a home that filled with books. My dad's grad school texts and books and stuff. And it just, to me, it felt like the most natural thing. If something happened, if you were feeling shut out or bullied or upset about something, and I had a fair amount of that in my childhood. The place to go was to my notebook and to write it down.
Yeah, and I used to do a little of that. I remember when I was supposed to be doing something else is when I always wrote. Like
Mhm.
for example, in math class. I was never more prolific with writing than in math, like books.
Yeah.
But that was fits and starts, and I'm always interested um in hearing because there's something effortless about what you write, and that's kind of interesting. It's like like you were saying, prosy and like you said, I think maybe lawyers or attorneys have the ability to come from the top of their head and come with ideas formed. Do you do a lot of editing of your work, or does it kind of come out and you just leave it as is?
It depends on the poem. I have written poems that come out almost fully formed. And my first book, Bullet Points,
Mhm.
my first book is about a shooting, my experience of witnessing a shooting. And
Mhm.
I actually left the practice of law for a couple of years to go and do an MFA and to try and write about it, to try and reckon with this experience. And I kept trying to write about it, and I could not. I would start a poem, and it would go nowhere. I tried writing stories. I tried writing essays. Nothing was coming together. I spent my MFA writing the poems that actually wound up in this book. Um, and then one winter morning in the middle of the pandemic, I think it was the first pandemic winter, I woke up and I had the first line for something, and I grabbed a marble notebook, um, and I started writing, and bullet points came out almost in just one chunk, like that weekend. And then I spent another year or two sort of shaping it up and doing things to it. But so I've written things that more or less come out, and I think those things I recognize that I'm cooking them. I'm sort of walking around thinking about them. I'm carrying them. I just can't seem to speak them yet. And then there are poems that I've got a great line, I've got a great image, and I write a draft of it, and it's not right. I this is not what I'm trying to do, and I'll spend years going back and forth to that one. And there's one of those in House of Myth and Necessity. I started writing that, the Linda Hall poem. I started writing that one in grad school, and when I started it, it was this riff on like Walt Whitman and
A riff on Walt Whitman.
and democracy. I was trying to make this poem somehow about sort of democracy, and it was so not working. I knew that I wanted it to end in a particular line from a poem that I love by Linda Hall. And I kept trying to write into that line, and it was not working. And then I finally, like several years later, realized it was not working because I had no skin in this poem. I was just sort of writing these things that didn't belong to me. And I
Mhm.
think once I knew what part of me needed to be in that poem, the poem came together. And it became this very, very deeply personal poem instead of this thing about soldiers in the Civil War.
Hysterical. What is the most helpful criticism that you've received, um, either in life or writing?
um, ooh. So my professor, one of my professors in grad school was the poet Kathy Hankla, who is a wonderful poet. Um, she has written tons and tons and tons. And one of the first things that she said in my workshop, and this was more or less the first workshop I had done. I had attended workshops at Kenyon Review and Breadloaf right before I started grad school. But this was my first sort of serious, like weekly meeting of people to workshop poems. And she said to me, like very early on, to all of us in the group, that the poem has a right to exist whether you like it or not. And that has helped me in a lot of ways. It has helped me to appreciate poems that I might not ordinarily, like that would not be my go-to poem to read. It's helped me to appreciate work like that doesn't kind of click with me right away. But it's also helped me work with my own stuff. I've learned to see the poems as not necessarily an extension of me, and so therefore they have to kind of reflect me and what I'm thinking at that moment. They can be their own thing,
Mhm.
and that's helped. You have that voice in your head that when you start writing says, "Oh, this is crap. Stop." I mean, I think everybody does, and
Yeah.
that really helped me with that voice.
I have a friend who was, and I mean this in all sincerity, one of my favorite writers who doesn't put her things out there.
Hmm.
And I'm always like, we gotta let that go. We gotta let those babies out for the world to see,
Hmm.
even if they're imperfect. So I really do appreciate that. tend to I tend to err the other way, and I'm just like, whatever. If you hate it, you hate it. But I think that it's important to um, sometimes stifle the inner critic. And
Hmm.
um, I'm also a yoga instructor, so we're always trying to be like, it is what like do what you have with what you can where you are, kind of thing. Like it doesn't matter if it's perfect. It's a practice.
Hmm.
It's a practice. It's like any muscle. Um, and it's funny, my brain is just jumping ahead, and the reason it is because of the poem you just read. I sometimes feel I have like a connection with people before I meet them when I read their things. So I listen to music before I interview somebody. I have a song.
Hmm.
If I read their thing, what song comes to mind? So while preparing for this interview, um, to set the right vibe in my brain, uh, your background being in law, which is very emotionally challenging, and of course complicated. Even though the law is very specific, there's so many complications because human beings
Hmm.
most of the time are involved. Um, I listened to Lord, the
Hmm.
artist Lord, the song Team. I don't know if you've ever heard it.
I don't think I knew that one.
Okay, listen to it if you have a chance. It's
Okay.
very interesting because you were talking about the Catholic school girls, you were talking
Hmm.
about, fuck you, whatever, uh, and what you went through in that particular. Listen to it. But what other forms of art inspire you when you're writing? Do you have another form of art that gets you, like whether it's physical or graphic arts or anything along those lines, acting, anything along those lines that you do or inspire you?
Film, definitely.
Hmm.
Film,
Hmm.
definitely. And film is always sort of working its way into my poems. There are a couple sort of film adjacent poems in this book. I have at various points, more or less faithfully written a Substack about poems where I write about a movie and I link it to a poem. So in my mind, I think those two are very linked. It's that
It's
dramatic
interesting.
irony thing again, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in what would you say if you could describe your poetry in movie? If you could take like, because when I was listening to the song, it's what reminded me of you. And then when you read
Mhm.
that particular one, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so interesting. But is there a movie in particular that you can attach to your style of
Oh,
writing? It's a hard one. It's weird. It's a weird question.
so I want to tell you a noir film because I love noir. And
Hmm.
that's always sort of working its way into my poems. But I think the movie that I would think of sort of most closely with my work is a Betty Davis movie called Now Voyager. And Now Voyager, it's a great film. Please see it if you haven't seen it. Um, in the movie, Betty Davis, this is all sort of mid-century America figuring out what a woman is supposed to be, like realistically. But in the movie, Betty Davis plays the daughter of this haranguing, awful, controlling woman of some means. She's grown up in society, but her mother just will not take her claws off from around her neck, realistically. And she she begins going to therapy, as we all must. And she forms a relationship with a therapist, and the therapist encourages her to start coming out of her shell. And she winds up taking a cruise where she meets a man and falls in love with him. Um, and it's sort of a romance, but it doesn't have the expected ending. It's a little noirish for a Betty Davis movie, and that's the one that I think of.
Very cool. Awesome. I'll take that to heart. Yeah, I'm a TCM
Hmm.
crazy person, and they have noir, hour noir, like
Hmm.
on Sundays.
Yeah, Eddie. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a noir fan as well.
Hmm.
That's kind of my favorite genre, and of course, Double Indemnity being the like
Hmm.
classic. But yeah, I could see that. I could definitely see that in what you were reading. I like what do I say? Conservation of language. So the most powerful punch in the fewest amount of words.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of what noir does the best.
Hmm.
Creates the vibe without not being, although it seems wordy, right? You used to have all these lines that are just going on and
Hmm.
on, but they're very intense, staccato,
Hmm.
interesting lines. Well, that's very cool.
Hmm.
Do you have anything else going on, like besides anything you're going to be published in soon? Anything that we should be looking for with you?
I'm sort of cooking poems right now.
Mhm.
So the summer will be the time when I will put together some stuff that hopefully I'll start sending out in the fall. I think I'm working on a novel. We'll see. It's I've gotten the farthest along with it than I have ever gotten with a novel before. So hopefully this will work. And I think the next piece that's in the hopper, so to speak, is I've got a piece that should come out soon at Plume.
Oh, great. And where can we find House of Myth and Necessity?
Well, you can find it on the Evil Online site, but you can, if you don't want to send them your money, and I hope that you won't, you can find it at Bookshop, and you can find it through River Rivers Bookstore, which is riverriverbooks.org. And you can also go to my webpage, which is jenniferasutherland.com, and click through there.
Was just going to ask you where we can find you, and I'm going to be putting all these links in the YouTube description so people can just click if they want to get there quickly. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me. It's really been fun and an honor. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting me talk a little bit about movies.
Why don't you talk about everything? Thanks so much.
Take care.